Oh well, I flubbed that right out of the gate. We're currently on Fleet 443. The 444 release is coming out sometime this week. If I promise you a date and time, we will miss it by a mile. But I promise you, sometime this week has closed. We closed it on Friday, and we'll have a new release. But as part of our release cycle and announcement cycle, we've announced MDM for Windows, in addition to the existing MDM we have support we have for Mac OS. And we also have some capabilities for Linux as well through remote script execution. So we'll kick this off just with a quick overview of Fleet for anybody who hasn't seen our UI before. And while I'm showing you the UI, we really do encourage a GitOps workflow, which means that you're maintaining a lot of your settings in a Git repo and using automations either with GitHub Actions or GitLab CI/CD to actually call our API and apply those settings as you make those changes. And it gives you a couple of benefits in that you have a second set of eyes checking the changes that you're making. Gives you a full backup of all of your settings and policies, and also allows you to revert. So if you made a mistake, there's an oopsies, you can easily undo that. Whereas a lot of other click ops driven UIs, once you've hit the go button, you can't go back. You can't see what the previous settings might have been. So we do encourage that GitOps workflow, but we do have a full UI as well. This is our dashboard page. It shows you this is our dog food environment. So that's what I'm going to be demoing today. We do eat our own dog food around here, and it's tasty and delicious. Um, you'll see how many Mac, Windows, Linux, and Chromebook hosts that are installed and reporting into to your fleet. We'll see software, any activity on here, and we'll come back to this activity log here in a little bit. And then your MDM settings for Mac and Windows for that. So on the next page we have is hosts. These are all the hosts that are here in your fleet. And if we drop down into a host, and you can see the details of a particular host. You can see the free space that they have, memory, current operating system that they're on, and oh, I'm bad. This is my machine, and I've not upgraded to 14.3. Bad JD. So you can see things like serial numbers, public and local area network IP addresses for that, and users on a device itself. The next tab in here, we can see scripts, and these are scripts that if this endpoint is online, you can actually run from here. So this is kind of handy for that. You can also call scripts through our API. And that we'll get into some more detail of how you might use that to automate some remediation workflows for that. You get a full software inventory on an endpoint, so this can be helpful on the IT side of things to say whether or not users are actually using the various pieces of software that you're installing to justify those licenses. So if you have somebody who's asking for a very expensive software product and they haven't actually used it in 90 or 120 days, you have justification here based on this reporting to possibly pull that license back and apply it elsewhere because the user may not be using it. On the security side, this is very helpful in knowing what versions of software are out there. If you have a vulnerable version of software, it may not even be installed in the applications folder. It might just be in their downloads folder, but that's a vector for attack on the security side. So you can put some remediation together, maybe a script that goes in and finds that rogue version of, we'll pick on Firefox this week, and go ahead and delete that out of the downloads folder or wherever it might be hiding. just to avoid that potential for attack there. The next tab here are queries. So these are queries that are scheduled to run on a device, and this is very helpful if you're gathering data with Fleet and then pushing that into a data lake or a log aggregator such as Splunk, Snowflake, Elastic. All of that data can be reported or gathered rather, and then reported in. So that gives you not just point in time data, but data over time on the endpoints that you're managing. And the final tab here are the policies that apply to this device. And what's nice about this is when you click on a policy, this is actually what a user can also be shown, is why this policy might exist and any resolution that you might have for that user. So you might have some capability of self-remediation for a user by putting the instructions in here. It could be as simple as just open a ticket with IT, or it could be step-by-step instructions like we have here for enabling, I think the firewall is where I have detailed instructions. So that's kind of the overview of a host. Under the controls here is where you would find all of the settings for basically device management for MDM. You can see all of the platforms that you're supporting and the versions and how many hosts you have for each version. You can actually step in and see exactly which hosts are in here. So if you need to target your 13.4 hosts to get them up to 14 macOS 14, you can step in here and see that. Same thing with Microsoft Windows 11 and 10 for that. And below here is where you can set that targeting for macOS and then also for Windows. And this allows you to basically encourage the user to upgrade, and once they hit that deadline, it'll actually force them and get in their way to force those upgrades. Right now, we are still using Nudge on the macOS side for these notifications, but we will be including declarative device management features to use the built-in OS updates for Sonoma in the coming months for that. And here's the Windows. Windows is a little more straightforward, and then you just set a number of grace days and period for that, and then Windows pretty much takes care of rebooting and applying that update. The OS settings tab here, this is where you can turn on full disk encryption for your endpoints. For File Vault, we do escrow the File Vault key, so that is escrowed here in Fleet for you. And under the custom settings here, these are the mobile config files on macOS, or XML files, CSP files, I think is what they're called on the Windows side. So these are the settings that you can enforce on the endpoints. Can be setting up a guest account, could be disabling USB devices, could be a particular Wi-Fi network setting. Anytime a policy is applied to a device, it goes into a pending state. From there, it steps into a verifying state, and this is where we use osquery to verify that profile has made it down to the endpoint. And once we verified that it has made it down to the endpoint, it'll move to a verified state. If for some reason it fails to make it to the host, we will retry one more time before moving to a failed state, and then you can see the host that might have you might see anybody with any failed policies applied to the endpoint. All right. Moving on to the next tab. This is the setup experience. So this allows you to control the setup experience, especially on Mac OS right now. So these are the screens that they would see when they first unbox a machine and go through the automatic device enrollment program process for that. You can also apply a bootstrap package. So this is an initial installation package that might be applied to the machine. This is where you could use third-party configuration tools such as Chef, Puppet, Monkey, etc. And on the Windows side, you'll have the ability to push something out like Chocolatey or Chef or Puppet as well for that. And then the final tab here are scripts. We support shell scripts for macOS and Linux, and PowerShell scripts for Windows as part of this. And this is again can be called through our API, but this allows you to manage through the UI any stored scripts that you might have for managing your endpoints. The next page we have here is our software inventory. And this is where you can see all of the various software that's installed. We'll see if I can do a search here for like Firefox. You can see that we have 6 versions across the organization, and I can step in here and see exactly what versions are installed. If there are vulnerabilities related to that, we're going to show you if it's just a single vulnerability. We'll show you the CVE. If there's more than that, like for version 115.03 has 69 vulnerabilities for that. And you can hover over that and see the vulnerabilities for that. And then you can also click in and see all the hosts that might have this version of Firefox on there. The next page here are queries. This is a powerful feature of Fleet. These are saved queries that we have that might be scheduled. You also have the ability to run a live query. So you can build your query here. We have over 320 tables of data that can be pulled from here, and we give you the entire database schema in here, along with some example scripts on how to use this. And then you can run a live query. And this allows you to narrow it down by platform. Maybe you want to target just your Windows hosts or your Linux hosts. It could be a particular team, labels, or target a specific host. You can search in here for a particular host. So if you go search for mine, you can actually pick that and target on that host. And these queries run near real time. Within 10 to 15 seconds, you'll start getting a response back from the endpoints that you're targeting that are online. And so it's near real time for getting an answer to any complex question that you might have. So it might be something like, which systems do I have that aren't up to date and also don't have enough free space to actually download and run those updates? I can pull a list from there, where in other systems you might have to aggregate your MDM list with other reporting tools, figure out how to make a pivot table in your favorite spreadsheet program. And put that data together. Instead, you can get all of that data in one fell swoop with a single query. And the community, we have a macOS or Mac admins community and the osquery Slack communities. And there's lots of resources in there and lots of other queries that other folks in the community have posted. And it's a great resource for that. The final page I'll touch on here is policies. And these are basically true, false, yes, no questions on that you might have on an endpoint. So it could be enable file vault. This basically this query results to a true or false, whether or not file vault is on or not. And what's powerful about this is that not only can this be displayed to the user through our Fleet desktop icon that ends up in either their taskbar or their macOS toolbar, but you can actually build automation behind this. So with this, you can actually turn on automation to call to either create a ticket in Jira or Zendesk or call a webhook. And this is where it gets really powerful. In this example, we have Tines, but it could be if this then that, Zapier, an open source solution like N8N, the world's your oyster. Anything that can provide a webhook, even if you want to script it yourself, you can now take action. So an example might be that you have a policy that, let's say Chrome is out of date. So you could have that when you have an endpoint or a host that has Chrome out of date, you can have that automation call the webhook. From there, that webhook then calls back to our API to run a script on the endpoint that says, quit Chrome and reopen it, uh, give it a pause, and then rerun the policy and see if we're still failing. If we're not failing, let's make a note of it in the log, move on with our day. If we're still failing, maybe let's escalate this. Let's create a ticket or a Slack ping to let somebody know that this host is not updating Chrome properly, and maybe something further needs to happen on that. That's a very simplified example of that, but that's the power that you have in creating a remediation workflow using policies and the built-in scripting capabilities of Fleet. So that's the quick and dirty 15-minute overview of Fleet. Happy to answer any other questions that you might have. There, unmute yourself and ask a question if you don't mind being recorded, or you can add it to the chat.
I just had a quick question based off of the recent announcement with Fleet. So we have macOS MDM and then we have Windows MDM, but also highlighting Linux a little bit. If I wanted to manage a Linux device and I wanted to make sure that a change was applied, how would I go about adding a script to a Linux device?
Yeah, you would wait for the next version of Fleet.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that capability is not actually here in the UI. It is a capable, you are able to do that through the API in 4.4.3, but 4.4.4 is where we'll actually have that similar UI in the controls here under scripts. You'll be able to add a shell script that can be targeted to a Linux device. But right now that is API only. So, and I guess that's a good call out to mention is that we are API first. All of our functionality starts as an API call. Everything that you're seeing in our UI here are API calls for that. We're not hiding anything in the UI and making it specific to the UI. Where a lot of other organizations, it might feel like the API is kind of bolted on. It feels like it literally is calling somebody else who's going and clicking that button for you. With Fleet, the API is absolutely the first thing that gets developed, and then we build the UI around that.
I have one. What's the end user experience when they have a vulnerability? What are they seeing if their device is found to be out of date or
So
vulnerable?
what they're going to see is they're going to have the Fleet desktop, and it's very difficult for me to demo that here. But essentially, they're going from the Fleet desktop. They can choose to, if an admin has enabled Fleet desktop for them. Uh, we we are transparent about the data that we're collecting on them, so they'll actually see their host record here. So if I jump into my host here, um, so they are going to see this record minus scripts and minus queries, if I recall correctly. So they're going to see all the details that we're collecting on the endpoint. And this is a matter of transparency, in that the user can see everything that we can see as an admin. If they have a failed policy, it's going to show up here, and it's going to be a red no. Here, they're also going to have a red dot on the Fleet desktop icon for that. And with that, if they're failing a policy, again, they can click on it and see what the possible resolution might be for that. But it really is more to be transparent about what's happening, but to enable the admin to take action on those endpoints that have failing policies.
I believe we had two questions from Ringo in chat. First question being, do you cover Chromebooks? Does Fleet cover Chromebooks?
So Fleet absolutely does cover Chromebooks. Let me see if I can get into an all teams here where we can look at the Chromebooks. Chromebooks are unique in that they are reporting, but they are unable to be managed through Fleet. You would need to use the Google Workspace Manager to manage the endpoints, but this gives you visibility and insight into the specific Chromebooks that are in your purview. And you can see a lot of detail on that particular Chromebook. Again, private, public IP addresses, and other information users that might be on the device for that. You can also see software, they're really browser plugins because it is a Chromebook that are installed on the endpoint. So this is helpful for vulnerable Chrome plugins that might be out there in the wild if you need to manage that. And again, uh, you can't really build policies around this because you can't action on it, but you can have insight into that.
And another question from chat. During deployment of Fleet, what kind of support is there for the end user?
Um, so the deployment of Fleet is generally pushing out the Fleet D package, and that once installed for the or on the user's endpoint, there's no further management that needs to be done. If we are doing an MDM enrollment, there is some action that might need to be taken on the endpoint for the user to accept that MDM enrollment. But otherwise, once installed the Fleet D package, the endpoint software will be automatically updated as you update your server. So there's no other maintenance on that point. There really is little interaction on the user. You have a couple of different ways of deploying this out to users. If you've entrusted them with admin credentials, you can just send them the package to install themselves. If you have an existing deployment infrastructure, you can absolutely deploy FleetD that way. And once deployed, they'll automatically start reporting in to your Fleet server, and you'll see them populate pretty quickly. Any other questions?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Uh, what if someone wanted to run a query locally?
So we do install a complete version of osquery. So you can use the osquery command line to run a query locally. I'm not really set up to demonstrate that here on this call, but yeah, how you can use osquery in its vanilla format is totally capable and possible with the Fleet setup. And if anything, because we're adding a lot more in the way of tables in availability, you're going to have a lot more information collected on that endpoint that'll be available to you versus the vanilla OS query install.
Perfect, thank you.
Absolutely.
Could you maybe expand a little bit more on the policies side?
Sure. So with policies, you know, I guess one of the things that I didn't touch on initially is with the paid version of Fleet, we do include all the CIS benchmarks as policies. There's over 100 policies for macOS and over 500 for Windows. And with that, we've kind of created the easy button of applying CIS benchmark policies to your fleet of devices. I wouldn't turn all of them on because they probably don't they're not required for your organization, but whatever those CIS benchmarks that are required for your compliance needs, whether it's SOC 2 compliance or an ISO compliance or just general security that you want for your organization, you can absolutely trim those policies on or off here and apply them to the various groups or teams, as we like to call them here. But essentially, any query that you create here can be turned into a policy. We do include a good healthy batch of default policies here to get you started. So if you want to add a policy about the firewall being enabled for macOS, we're going to give you that automatically here, and then you can extend this to whatever your requirements are for your organization. And the unique thing about this is it essentially needs to evaluate to true as part of that. So as long as it evaluates to true or false, you can create a policy around that and then build on that using a webhook to build out your automation if you have something failing that policy. Is that helpful?
Sorry, yes, thank you. That was very good.
And just a quick question for those that might be a little bit more unfamiliar with like the term webhook. When a policy fails, what kind of capabilities can a webhook enable once it's triggered?
So when you're calling a webhook, essentially this is an endpoint that's just listening to be called. And when that happens, what Fleet's going to do is it's going to take, pardon me, I have a little tickle in my throat.
Sorry, JD.
Sorry about that. So what's going to happen is that it's going to call that webhook and it's going to pass a bunch of JSON to that endpoint or to that webhook. And with that, it is going to and then the automation takes over from there. You have all of that data in the automation to then do with which as you want. So it's going to have information about the endpoint that's affected. It's going to have information about the policy itself that's failing for that. It's going to have the link to the policy, so you can take that and kind of build on that to do what you want. Now, the example I gave was like to reach out back into our API to call a script to restart Chrome. But it may be something more like they have, let's say we have a version of Firefox that's out of compliance, not one that we want. It may be calling a script that goes and you can pass it the path of that script and actually have that script remove that version of Firefox off the device if it's, let's say, in the downloads folder or what have you.
Awesome.
But you yeah, you can absolutely build a Rube Goldberg machine of an action off of that. The low code, no code environments out there really give you a lot of capability once you have that trigger. So basically that, if you think of it as a Rube Goldberg machine, that's the initial thing that gets the ball rolling down the track and starts the first action. And then from there, it's whatever you want to happen. All right. Other questions? So I invite you to try out Fleet. We have Fleet preview. The instructions for that are available on the fleetdm.com website. You can also absolutely spin up your own version of Fleet using the community edition or the free edition of Fleet. We have Docker Compose files out there along with larger infrastructure configurations using Terraform or Kubernetes, etc., to get you started quick and easy with Fleet. And if you have other questions, please feel free to reach out on the community forums, either the MacAdmins Slack Fleet channel or the osquery Slack Fleet channel, and links to those are on our support page.
Thanks, JD.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining. Ta ta, pip pip, cheerio.
Have a good one.